Your finances will tell you just as much about where your mindset is and the health of your mindset regarding your business as anything. Because where you put your resources is exactly where your mind is.
Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alecia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go.
Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alecia St. Germain, and today I want to share a cautionary tale. And it's that time of year when we start to think about finances and we're getting ready for taxes, and 1099s will be due soon out to any contractors that you may have paid throughout the year. You may be starting to have some conversations with your CPA. And I don't know how you handle your bookkeeping for your business. There's varying degrees of how people do it, but I want to share with you a experience that I have been going through over the last, really my whole journey through having businesses and moving from being very reactionary to then making it a main focus to really help myself understand finances and feel a lot more confident. And my prayer for you is that you take away from today's episode maybe some action items that you want to take, some things that you want to do differently, some things that maybe aren't working as well for you right now in your business and you haven't taken the time to handle it. And also maybe to bring a little bit of normalcy. There are so many people that I hear that are in these varying degrees with everything from I haven't yet filed my prior year taxes from even 2023 or 2022, and I'm still trying to get that straightened away, to somebody who has a bookkeeper, has a good handle on their finances and is really good at compliance, but maybe some other things that you could tweak in your business. So there's a whole gamut here that I want to cover. And so this podcast is all about what it means to be a human, having a human experience while you're building a business, while you're running a business. And so a lot of times Jonathan and he's my regular co-host. He's not with me today, but we will talk a lot about the emotional intelligence that goes into running a business and the leadership skills that it takes, the communication skills, just all the different things. But this is also about redefining wealth. And a component of redefining wealth, and a very logistical big part of wealth, is the financial piece and knowing your numbers, knowing if what you're doing is actually profitable, or are you just somebody who is going through thinking that you're doing the right things, doing the right motions, and then wondering, gosh, I don't even have anything to show for as hard as I work. The whole process, the whole gamut. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I'm kicking this off. I like to always share from real life experience. What I often find is that whatever I am going through or thinking about, there's a whole lot of people around me who are going through and thinking about the same things or about to encounter the same things. So I always just find it so interesting the way we mirror each other, the way whatever is happening in my life is happening to people around me as well. So back in December, so I had been using a tech-based accounting firm. When I first started my business, our family has a CPA we've used for like my whole life, essentially. And then when I started my real estate business and was doing that, my version of keeping books was like frantically in like June of the year, after the year I was supposed to file, like trying to put together some sort of spreadsheet based on some accounts that my CPA had set up for me and sort of fumbling my way through making a spreadsheet of every expense that I've ever had. I never knew how to keep books monthly. I didn't really know that there was this thing called bookkeepers. And I feel really silly telling you that, but I mean, I was started in my early 20s, my mid 20s. And I was a respiratory therapist by trade. I never took any business classes or did anything around that. And so at one point I even took a community class around accounting and I did well in it, but I didn't really understand how to apply it to my business. So I went through a lot of years like this, and that was okay. And it worked until I started having more responsibilities, taking on more deals, then started having kids. And then I found myself really struggling to keep up financially with what was going on in my business. I was just very much doing the business and not really understanding the inflow and outflow of money. And I think that that's really, really common with a lot of people. Is a lot of times our businesses, our entrepreneurship is a second part of life. It happens after we have a career of some sort, and then you decide you're going to go into business for yourself because maybe you have a skill, a talent, an interest. You learn about investing in real estate. So you learn these strategies for getting clients. You learn strategies for finding deals, for fixing up your property, renting it out. You have all these strategies for essentially making money in business. And none of these secondary careers that we take on are ever really like, here's how you act like a CEO. Here's how you act like a CFO. Here's how you should look at your self-employed business and know that what you're doing is profitable. Unless you were a very specific business major in school. And even at that, I don't think that they really teach you like the real life puzzle pieces and how they all like fit together. So unless you were that person, it's not even a natural inclination. So many people go out with a talent, a skill, and an interest, and they start a business because it's a passion. It is, and I mean that wholeheartedly. It's a passion. It's a purpose. I do think there are people out there who go out there and do business for the money, like they like the potential of the money, but it is such a long, thankless, up and down, stressful road that if you don't have some sort of heart for what you're doing, you are not going to make it. You're not going to last, right? So it is a true labor of love for so many entrepreneurs, and it's beautiful to have this purpose in life. And it's beautiful to have this reason and this passion for what you do. And so you have this, and that's incredible. And one of the pieces that often gets missed when you are operating from a place of purpose and passion is a lot of the money pieces. And so that was one of the things we just finished up planning our agenda that we're going to go through in our retreat for our Phoenix, Arizona retreat that's coming up. And the entire day 2 is really digging into your past money beliefs that you have brought into your current business and how that is affecting where you're at. There are people who end up with these plateaus in their business where it's like no matter what they do, they just cannot break through a certain level in their business. There are people who look at investing in their business as a reward for hitting certain money goals, which many times those investments that you want to reward yourself with, like when I get this, then I'll invest in extra help for my business. But you're never going to get to that without the extra help in your business. And so these really limiting beliefs that you have taken in regards to money, this resource, and brought it into your current business. We're going to spend an entire day 2 on that and then integrating that into your passions and your purpose and your skill levels and really helping you connect to who you are in this world and what you're up to, but then bringing a piece of financial stability and wealth building and forward thinking, like really thinking future, because so often people will bring past money limiting beliefs into their business and then they recreate the past. Instead of being this forward thinker and creating this really incredible future, you unintentionally create the past. And that cycle keeps happening. So we're really, really excited about this retreat because we know how transformative it's going to be from that perspective of aligning passion and purpose with being prosperous and wealthy and really breaking through those money beliefs. And this is really part of the journey, and why this is so relevant is I went from this place of being very reactionary and just trying to get a handle on getting my finances together and getting them in so I could file my taxes and like just be compliant. And then not really understanding every month when I was paying myself payroll, like what are these taxes for? And when does this tax need to be paid? My CPA would always tell me like when I needed to pay these things, but I didn't really understand what I was paying and where it ended up in a bookkeeping situation and what any of it meant. So I sought out, after I ended up during the pandemic late on my taxes by a couple years, like I think I was 1 year behind, and then getting fined heavily. And then actually having it reversed, like the government decided they were going to reverse these fines because of the situation that we were all in. And they sent me money back, which never happens. I did not take that whole experience lightly. I took that as a total wake up call that how I was operating in my business was no longer going to work. And that I wanted to really upgrade how I was showing up in my business and be a lot more proactive. And I never wanted to be in that situation again where I was wasting time and paying extra fees that I didn't need to pay if I was just compliant. So still operating from that place of just being compliant, but now being proactively compliant versus reactionary compliant. And so I hired a tech-based bookkeeping company on a recommendation of a friend who also has a similar business model to mine. And, it was awesome. Like at first it was so great. I just loved the way that they were using technology to make it really simple for me to review transactions that they didn't quite know what they were for. And you could meet with the bookkeeper. But I also realized very early on that they were using like brand new bookkeepers, because I was always having someone new who I was interacting with, but then they worked as part of a team. So then they had like a senior person that looked over everything. And for a couple of years, it worked really well. And then I started to notice that things were not being categorized in the right way. My books were not being reconciled. Like the AI system was like kind of reconciling the books, but it didn't look like a human had been looking over my books to actually reconcile things truly and make sure things were correct. And so I made a commitment last year. I really wanted to understand my finances. I wanted to understand what the numbers meant, what they were actually telling me about the health of my business. So this is really starting to move from being compliant And I talk about this in one of the episodes last year with Nikki Fraser, but like this idea of moving from being compliant to being a planner, to strategically planning my goals with numbers in mind, understanding how my business performed year over year, understanding what certain things that I did and how that actually translated into profits. And so I started to take that perspective in doing my business and making some of those changes. And so as part of that process, it's interesting. It wasn't really on my radar to change bookkeeping firms. And someone came to me and had asked for a recommendation for a bookkeeper, and they didn't want something corporate. So I, reached into my network. I said, hey, does anybody know a bookkeeper? Someone gave me a recommendation, and something in my head said, maybe you need a different bookkeeper. And I just started to think about it a little bit. And lo and behold, I got an email from the company that was doing my bookkeeping that they were increasing prices drastically and that they were looking to create year-long commitments. Like you had to have a 1-year commitment. They would still bill monthly, but it would be a 1 year, you'd be committed on a yearly basis. And something told me like, I think I can do better. Like part of being good and savvy with your finances is not just taking the first recommendation that's given to you because it's easy. And I see this all the time, right? You're in business, you need support in your business. And so you ask your network, who do they use? Who do they recommend? And then you choose that VA, you choose that support person, whoever it is, because someone else uses it and the person says yes, and it's just easy. And so you're like, cool, I handled it. Only sometimes it doesn't work out really well. And you realize, oh, this wasn't the best decision, or I'm not getting the service that I, originally signed up for, or something's starting to change. And so I did an earlier episode also around like tolerating things that aren't working in your business and how costly tolerating things in your business can be. And oddly enough, I think it was in the context of like bookkeeping and taxes last time I talked about it as well. And so when I got this email like, oh, okay, we're going to be raising prices, we want you to lock into this year-long contract, I thought, okay, I have a deadline and I'm going to make a decision in the next 2 weeks. I have to either let this company know I'm going to stay with them, or I'm going to do a little exploration and see maybe there's a better fit for me, for my goals, for what I want to learn. And so I ended up getting connected with another company, Peak Solutions. And I really liked the person I was talking to. And I think I'm going to have her on the podcast because I think she could offer a lot of value for you in this whole realm of talking about finance. And Nikki Fraser and her husband, Dan Fraser, at Next Key Services, that's like another amazing resource for finance too, that a lot of times I send people to. And so I end up talking to her, and on top of it, she's not only a bookkeeper or has a bookkeeping agency, but also she does this other thing, and she has a real estate background, and she helps entrepreneurs and small business owners actually really understand their numbers and reach their goals from a financial standpoint. And so I was really intrigued by her one-on-one coaching that she did. So I decided to start working with her this year. So I'll be documenting that as we go forward for you. I just want you to be able to come along on this journey of really grasping the financial piece of my business to help you do the same, right? To really help you go beyond just the talented, incredible, not just, but the talented person that you are that does business and knows how to make money, but actually be able to retain that money and reach certain goals where your business actually supports you. It's not just you going through the motions of doing things and then ending up in situations where maybe you're property rich, but cash poor, or you've built a business that doesn't support your lifestyle. I love her approach because it's like a super holistic picture of what you want to have your business look like and what fills your soul, but then also what's profitable and what feeds your family. So I'm going to be taking you along on that journey periodically as we go through as well. And I'll have her come on the show as well to give you some insights as well. So, okay, I'm going to switch over bookkeepers. I'm going to let this other company finish out the work that they're doing for 2024. And then I'm going to start working with her just so that we have we're speaking, like, she was not attached to me leaving this company and coming over to work with her. She would still do the coaching with me. But I just thought, oh, this just makes more sense. I did not know how much I was being guided that this was the move that I needed to make. So I went to this other company and I was not unhappy with their services. I just felt like she was a better fit for what I wanted to get out of my bookkeeping services and what direction I was headed in and what my financial focus was. So I was not unhappy with them. In fact, I had another friend who also worked with them and she was considering leaving them too. And I actually helped her understand more of the model that they were moving to with the 1-year commitment that, I clarified some things and she was actually going to stay. And so I shared all of that with him. Like, I'm not unhappy with your services. I think this is just a better fit. And so I want you to finish my 2024 books. And then on January 1, she's going to take over, but I want you to do the package to send to my CPA. And they were like, okay, no problem. We'll charge you one more time in December. You'll have paid the full year. And then we'll close out your books and you can download everything and transfer everything over. So I think, great. I've handled this so eloquently. I've been really upfront. I've been helpful. Like, I've treated everybody really well along the way. And lo and behold, I get this phone call from my girlfriend who's also with the same company. And she's like, hey, did you know the company that does our bookkeeping literally just sent an email and they are closing the doors? Like, they're not going to do our bookkeeping anymore. It's just like, there's no service anymore. And I look in my email and I have this email, like, stay tuned. Like, this is right at between Christmas and New Year's. I get this information. And normally, if something like this would have happened, I would have been so panicked. And this is a testament to doing the mindset work and having such awareness and using mindfulness in your business. Normally, I would have been panicked about this whole drama unfolding. Instead, I was like, okay, well, you've been behind on your taxes before. You've paid fees, fines, and penalties before. You've come light years from where you were at that point and having things organized and how you approach things. So we're going to get through this. We'll just figure out what happens. And the company's like, we cease to operate. We'll let you know, this was a Friday. We'll let you know on Monday how to get access to your data. And I'm sharing this with you because if you are someone who uses a bookkeeping service that is tech-based, that uses their own proprietary software, if that company goes under and you don't have access to that, your books are gone. Like, at that moment, if they did not figure out how to get us our data, we had no books. I would have paid for the entire year of having my bookkeeping done and have literally nothing to show for it. So I really caution you on that piece if you're working with a company. And that's not to say that these companies that are doing this are bad, but I think it's something worth noting because I did not see this coming. This was a reputable company who worked with a lot of businesses who'd been in business for a long time. But looking back in hindsight, I can see what was happening. Number one, the quality of work was not there. Also, I noticed over time that they were bringing a lot more AI into the platform. So there was a lot of new upgrades that were happening last year. And every time I logged in, it would be like, oh, here's a new feature. Oh, here's a new feature. And then at one point, I'm like literally talking to a computer and it's trying to help me categorize things. And I'm like, I don't think anybody's reviewing anything since August. I think I've just been working with a computer. And even though I could message someone like a human, there still wasn't a lot happening. So in hindsight, it's always 2020 when you look back and you're like, oh, I don't think things have been happening. So if you have somebody like a bookkeeping service like this, I really recommend that you make a habit. If you're not, like, don't be blasé about your books. Don't just like pass them off to someone and then just assume that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Make a regular monthly appointment with yourself to review things. Make sure things are being categorized correctly. Make sure they are clear on what everything is that you are doing and how they're categorizing it, and make sure that they're doing the work. Because I didn't do that. I was like, oh, this is like set it and forget it. And so I did not do that. And so because of that, I kind of took my hands off of it a little bit, and I didn't notice right away what was happening. And so what I realized now in hindsight, like they ceased to operate literally 2 weeks after they had negotiated with me, like, okay, we're going to finish out your 2024 books. I don't think the person I was talking to on the phone had any clue that any of this was happening. I don't think my bookkeeper knew anything of this was happening, like my contact point was happening at all. So I think everybody was blindsided by this situation, and I really feel for them. So I normally would have been panicking, but I already knew we had a plan. And while I felt like it was really unjust and unfair, and I was looking at the possibility of having paid for an entire year of bookkeeping with nothing to show for it, I was like, that's okay. Part of me looked at it as like, well, this is part of the risk of being an entrepreneur, is there are people that you do business with that it doesn't work out with, that do shady things, that don't treat people right. And I am smarter for it. And I guess I've arrived because I've got this challenge that has come up, right? Like if you do business for any amount of time and you don't have any challenge or injustice or shady person that you deal with, then maybe you're not playing big enough in some ways. So I kind of just, all right, we'll deal with it on Monday. Mind you, all of this is happening while I have come down with the flu, like I was taking Advil and Tylenol alternating every 3 hours just to keep my fever at 102. It was like not a fun break by any stretch. And then we're going to pile on this like situation, and it can feel like a pile on, but I was like, you know what? That's all right. We're going to figure this out. So then I get an email on Monday. Oh, good news. We've been acquired by another company. So on Friday, they're ceasing to operate. We'll tell you how to get your data on Monday. On Monday, oh, great news. We've been acquired by another company who is not a bookkeeping firm and has not been around for more than a few months. It's actually a different firm, and they're kind of acquiring this thing. So the whole thing is really weird. But I realized looking backwards, I think what was happening, and this is just my speculation, but I think what was happening is the reason they were trying to lock us into year-long contracts for 2024 is I think they were looking to either get a loan or sell the company or do something to increase the value of the company so that they could like get some more money injection in some way, whether that looked like selling it or getting a loan or whatever. But they needed commitments from their customers to build that value. And the problem is the way that they rolled it out and the way that they communicated it was super confusing. It was really poorly executed. It was a very short time frame. It was very reactionary. So my guess is I knew that they had raised a lot of capital over the last several years. And my guess is that they over-invested in artificial intelligence. This is purely my speculation. That's why I'm not using names or anything. But that they overly invested in artificial intelligence and it didn't pan out quite the way that they thought it would. And they overspent and then they ended up running the company into the ground. I think. I have no idea. But it's fascinating to watch it in hindsight, because here's this bookkeeping firm who should have a handle on their numbers. As I am going through this, so I'm talking about things being a mirror for what you're going through. As I am going through and I'm like, oh, I need to do better in how I make my choices to spend money in my business, and to really know for every dollar that I spend, what else does that affect in my business and the profitability, and what that means for us personally as a family, and just being so much more aware. And here's this company that seems to have like hedged their bets way too much. Quality of service goes down. Rollout of things gets poorly communicated, and it just becomes a mess. So on Monday, they're magically acquired. And I'm like, I don't trust these people anymore to fit. Like, I have no idea. I'm definitely leaving. I've already signed this engagement letter. I was already leaving. And so as I'm communicating with them, they are like, we are not liable for finishing your books. We will only do this for people who choose to stay with us. And mind you, they've not communicated to me to this point. Here I am, January 10th, when I'm recording this. They have not communicated with me to this point. Like, what is the investment to stay with them? What does it look like for them to honor and finish out the books? Nothing. And I was like, you know what? You're telling me you're not going to keep your agreement. I'm not going to continue with you. And so I had to, the way that they hand over my data to me was I had to individually download by account messily every single transaction and everything that they'd recorded. And my bookkeeper that I now have is going to have to kind of rebuild it a little bit. And we've got to go through and we've actually got to clarify some of the transactions that are miscategorized, because some AI was doing it and there was no human actually looking over it anymore. I could have been in a such worse situation. I feel very grateful that I was able to get access to the data, get it downloaded, even if it wasn't in the most user-friendly format. It was definitely handled really shady the way that, they could have like just not given me my data. And so again, when you're deciding on bookkeeping, make sure that even if you choose to change bookkeepers, that you have some kind of access to your data, because it could really slow you down and mess you up if someone chooses not to do the business, if they don't want to give you your data, if they've been compiling it in a proprietary software. This is where artificial intelligence and AI and some of this stuff can really trip you up if you become over-reliant on it. And I'm only sharing this from a perspective of here's what I've learned. Whatever you choose to do is fine. It's your business. You are the business owner. You take the risk. You make the ultimate decision. But what I've learned is having my very important financial data that tells me the health of my business in a place where I don't have ownership or access to it readily. If I change service providers, that's problematic. I think that's a really problematic thing. So I'm very grateful I've been able to retain the information that they've done to this point. And with a little bit, I'm going to have to reinvest more money into my 2024 books, which it's not fair. It should have been, I wish it was different. I feel bad for the people who work there, because at this point from them, I'm just getting copy and pasted like generic responses. So it has to be hard to sleep at night to know that like you were fired on a Friday, you were hired back on a Monday, and then like all your customers are angry and scared and upset, and you're taking the brunt of it, and you're getting copy and pasted like, here's what you say if the customer says this. And I could tell like there's no human here. No humanity. That's what I mean. There's a human there, but there's no humanity. And so I feel for these people that they are being put in this situation with this really crazy way of doing business. So all of that to share with you that I think that it's really important as we go into 2025 that you take some time and really think about how are you handling your finances, not just from a compliance standpoint, but from actual health of your business. Because as we're going forward,
what I'm starting to pay attention to in my business is, what does it cost me to deliver the services that I provide? Do you know actually what parts of your businesses, what types of investments that you make that are more profitable and have a better return on your investment than others? Do you really understand what it costs you to acquire the way that you make money, to acquire the property, to acquire the customer? Do you actually know those things? Because if you don't know those things, it's very hard to predict what you can do in the future to give you some sort of control over, if I do this, then that's what will happen, or that's what we expect to happen. And then how do we adjust when it doesn't happen? So I really want you to take today and this time right now as you're listening to the podcast and reflect on, do you really have a handle on your finances? Or is that something I want to invite you to go on that journey with me this year in 2025 to make that a bigger priority in your business, to not only rely on your talent and your skill for making money, but actually understand how to make decisions, data-driven decisions that tell you the health of your business and tell you what decisions maybe you want to make or don't want, or want to hold off on, and not just be swept up in emotions. I think then it's very easy from emotional intelligence standpoint. Sometimes we make decisions from a feeling place. And when we talk about feelings are important, but also backing up feelings or gut feelings with data that's driven by your numbers and understanding what your business actually produces for you and what expenses and how you choose to spend your money. Why do you choose to spend the money you do? There was a time very early on in my business when I chose to spend a lot of money on mindset coaching because I felt a lot of imposter syndrome, and my finances reflected my mindset. Because instead of me spending more money on marketing and finding the actual clients, I had to spend a lot of money on my mind. And it wasn't until I got a handle on that I could make different investments. And so your finances, where you're choosing to spend your money, what you're choosing, the strategies that you're buying, the courses that you're buying, that's a big indicator when you go back and analyze of where your blocks are, what's actually in the way, and where you can tune in and do more work. You may think you're investing in strategy because you need it, but you're actually investing in strategy because you feel like an imposter. And so your finances will tell you just as much about where your mindset is and the health of your mindset regarding your business as anything, because where you put your resources is exactly where your mind is. So I wanted to invite you in 2025 to pay more attention to your finances. And if you're someone who's been really proactively compliant, but you haven't actually taken the time, the next level for you is taking the time to analyze really, where is your time best spent? Where do you get your best returns in your business? What things could you actually stop doing because they aren't as profitable for you? And where could you actually double down because it's a better return on your investment? All of that, if you're not tracking and spending time analyzing that on a monthly basis, and then looking at where you're spending your money as a reflection of where your mindset might be, then you're missing a significant opportunity. So I hope that today you take this as a cautionary tale. I'm so grateful for the whole experience. I always believe these hardships come at the perfect moment that you're ready to receive the lesson. So as irritating and frustrating and sad as the whole situation is, as much as I think there's some really shady stuff going on here that doesn't make any sense because the company became insolvent. So you can't even contest that they didn't deliver things that they have not delivered on. It's just a loss. It's a loss in the business, and it is what it is. And I hope that it makes you think a little bit more strategically about how you want to go into 2025. So with all of that being said, I'm sending you so much love. And if Jonathan were here, he would say, be well
and we look forward to seeing you back here next week.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.